Okay. The Shulchan Aruch Siman Kuf Peiches discusses the dinim of Maris. It's going to be the first shiur when it comes to the dinim of Maris. There are a few shiurim on the Siman. There's going to be more shiurim than usual because while part of it is understanding Shulchan Aruch, a lot of practical, it also applies to this. One of the most practical simanim in Shulchan Aruch. Mostly what's not written in Shulchan Aruch. When you go through and focus on the Alter Rebbe and Tzemach Tzedek mainly, because certain nekudas that come from them. And today we're going to start with just going through the colors. Shulchan Aruch starts by saying, Kol mare Adom, anything which is red. Beinimu kehei harbe oy omoik tmeim. Kehei over here doesn't mean what today in Hebrew means kehei, which means darkness. Fakir, it means bright. Whether it's bright or it's deep, dark red, tmeim, stomach. Yeah, what is the Alter Rebbe right away explains to you just the basic knowledge. The Gemara gives you four kinds of red which are tamei. The Alter Rebbe brings it from the Beis Yosef, and that's the only four which are tamei midiraisa. Still in all, today's day and age, mikol mokim ha'idna loy bekin bechazus adama. Today we're not bucky in the color of, in the way the blood looks. Even b'mei chachmei haTalmud nimnoim, some chachamim nimnoim liris damim. For sure today, shein la'adam lishon al chochmasi v'netar shum dam hadoime lemare admumis. Any kind of blood which looks like has some redness to it, you can't be metar. Hilkach afilu k'mei mitilsin k'mei basar tzli nami lo mitarinon. Those two which the Gemara mentions that are tahir, we are not metaher. That's a Beis Yosef. Afilu diha mehen, even if it's lighter than the colors or it's further removed from the color that the Gemara mentions, or from red. It's not exactly red, but it looks like a faded red or like a different color red. Still not metar. Why? Because we're not bekiyim in the Maris Adamim today. So you have the four which are deraisa, and you have all the other ones that because we're not bekiyim, we make it asa. Then the Shulchan Aruch continues, v'chein kol mare shachar. Same thing to any kind of black mare. Why is black the same? So black is the fifth one that the Gemara mentions. So you're going to see a lot of times it says you daled maris dam or hey, 4 or 5. The four are the four red ones. The fifth one is the black. The Gemara explains right away. Shashachir adam. The Alter Rebbe brings it from the Rambam. Shashachir adamu l'shidlo kokeshenekar min aguf v'hushchar. Key words to understanding. Really, this blood, which you see, this black, was blood, which changed its color keshenekar when it left its place. Whatever that means, we're going to see soon in Tzemach Tzedek. Midiraisa, you only have certain colors, certain blacks which are mamash aser. Yeah, anovim ashchayrim, black grapes, dioy hayovish, dry ink. But kezeisim ashchayrim, black olives, or zephes, or tar, or ka'oirev, or like a raven is tahir. And now the Ran says, now that we don't know, we're not bucky in it. Afilu kezayis v'diha mimenu tama, even if it looks like a black olive, v'diha mimenu, and it's a little bit faded from it, still tama. Afilu diha minadiha, even if it's faded after faded, means it's further removed from black, it's still tama. What's the reason? The Alter Rebbe brings later. He says, even though it's further removed from the first black, still in all, there's a gzeira of chachamim when it comes to diha from black, when it comes to the faded from black. So to be metame any kind of black or red bizman hazeh, because we're not baki in maris, Gzeira shemayovoy acher echad l'taher marei atomei. Because the gzeira, maybe somebody's going to come and be metaher something which is tamei. Therefore, today is a gzeira from Chachamim to be metamei each and every one. The first in Sif Aleph, the Alter Rebbe says about the reds that Einanu Bikim, we don't know what the reds are. In Sif Beis, in Sif Kotan Beis, Alter Rebbe says about these that it's because of a Gzeira. Because maybe someone's going to be tired and Mare, which is Tomei. Interesting to point out, there is a Knei Boisem, Rav Bransdorfer, he passed away already, in the Eida Chreidis, where he, right in the beginning of Siman Kuf Peiches, he points out this interesting differentiation between what Alter Rebbe writes in Sifkot and Aleph, that he writes Einanu Bikin, and Sifkot and Beis, where he writes that it's a Gzeira, which would seem to apply that when you have Diha, when you have the faded away a lot from the black, it's no longer a Shaila of a Deiraisa, it's purely a Derabanan, Masha'inkin, and reds is a Suffolk Deiraisa. And it happens to be, this fits with what we're going to see in a second from the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek Siman Kuf Chav Daled. That's the first tshuva that I mentioned yesterday we're going to be going through. Tzemach Tzedek Siman Kuf Chav Daled starts with a question. The question that Tzemach Tzedek wants to answer is, when we're talking about this diha mina diha that's faded after faded from the color black, why is it that it's usher? Is it because it became a suffix deraisa? We have a suffix on each one of the bloods, or is it purely what's a suffix deraisa? Maybe it's similar from diha mina diha. Maybe it's similar to one of the 4 damim, the 4 red ones which are usher, or the black one which is usher mideraisa. So it's essentially a suffix deraisa every time you see such a color. Because we're not bulky, we don't know if it fits into any of these colors. It's asa deraisa, it becomes asa deraisa. And according to that, the Lashon of the Tzemach Tzedek is a fizeh suffix deraisa mamish b'chol mare oidem. Any kind of red mare that you're going to see is going to be mamish a suffix deraisa. Any kind of redness that you have falls into the category of a suffix deraisa. And you have to be metame, or be'etzem there is no suffix. It's clear that it's not a deraisa. Elamai, we are machmir, and it doesn't have an isur mideraisa b'chlal, only isur midrabanan. What's the diha mina diha in red or in black? Diha from them. That's the lashon of the question is. Kaim olon shekol mare adam shisharei moitzav dikas eda bekasem menim hu kei hei harbe oi omek tmeim v'chekom mare shachor yesh istapik im chum lezu mitzad asofek shebe'emes b'chol mare adam oi shachor afilu dio min adir yesh leim ash mikom makem ef she'asilu mideraisa shum de'olai hu doime le'echad min ahei damim atmeim oi shebe'emes en lo istapik be'klal אולי הוא מאחד מהי דם מתמל, שאנו מחמירים דרך חומר לבד לאויסר, ואם כן בזה סופק דרייסה כלל, כיס דרבנן לבד. What's the difference if it's a deraisa derabanan? Very simple. If it's a derabanan, you could have much more. If it's a derabanan, you make it similar to a kesem, essentially, at least in, you don't make the bdika into a kesem, but you could be more mekel in certain scenarios. If it's a sofek deraisa, there's no way to be mekel. Where do you draw the line? What's it, if you put in the category of deraisa, you put in the category of derabanan. The Tzemach Tzedek goes into a whole discussion. The discussion he starts explaining as follows. Be'etzem, the understanding, the way that Tzemach Tzedek looks at it is be'etzem really any kind of diha, any kind of faded color, the suffix deraisa. Why? Because when the Gemara mentions the 4 kinds of damim that are aser, each and every one of them is brighter than the next one, is lighter than the next one. And also the ones that are in between the 4, like you have, let's say the first of the 4 is very dark, and the next one is a little bit lighter. So even the colors between the first one and the second one are also tamei, mideraisa. And that's how it's mashma from Rashi in that Gemara over there. And according to that, even every single mare of red, we have to say that maybe it's also mideraisa. Why? Because we don't know which one to categorize as the reddest one or the lightest one. The fact is, the Gemara mentioned to you 4 that are 1, 2, 3, 4, and each one of them is it's like an order. You have the first one, the darkest, all the way to the lightest or to the brightest. And now, even though we're going to look at it, it's going to look that it's very far-fetched, very far removed from the original red, and it's clearly that it's different, that it's not similar to the ones in the Gemara. At the end of the day, the fact is that the way the list was written was in that order. The lightest one that's mentioned is Yain Mazuk, by the way. The darkest one is Damak, the lightest one is Yain Mazuk. The Tzemach Tzedek explains that there are an order of one to another. So Tzemach Tzedek right away asks the question, if you want to say it even lighter, what we're trying to say now, even lighter than these colors, is a Safek Deraisa. We have a problem, because Rashi in Maseches Shabbos tells you that if you put more than 2-to-1 ratio of water to wine, if there is blood which is next to it, it's no longer considered dam. That color is not dam. That color is what he calls Yurok, which is not really the Yurok the way we know it today, and it's tar. According to that, the Tzemach Tzedek says that if so, the question would be, so then we're back to the question, where do we draw the line between what's a Safek Deraisa, what's a Derabanan? So he tells you, happens to be that if you Me'ikar Adin, if you have blood which looks like wine, our wine, he says, which is Mazuk 1-to-3 ratio, it's Dam Kosher. And he goes to the whole discussion about the various types of the Girsais in the Gemara, and then he says Yain Nikra Franz, it's much less red than the Fontek, whatever these kinds of grapes were, and therefore that's if you want to calculate, you calculate with that wine. And if you do 1-to-4, it's for sure not a problem. It's for sure tamei. It's for sure not aser midiraisa. Yeah. So where do you draw the line? He says we use these wines. If you use the name Franz, I don't know which wine it's referring to, but I think it is it's not a fully red wine. When I searched online, it's not a fully. It's a lighter. It's a pink orangey wine. The grapes are not rosé, kind of. It's a French grape. That's what it's called, Franz. It's a certain grape which creates a light rose wine. So that one seems like that. He says for sure it's not a deraisa. You want to go that extreme? That's for sure not a deraisa. And if you use the deeper wine and it's Mazuk 4-to-1, it's also not a deraisa. It's for sure not a deraisa. We're still oiser because we're oiser even the other matters, but that's for sure only a derabanan. And he's medayik it also from what the Alter Rebbe himself writes in Sifkot and Beis. He says, where's the exact lashon? 1 second. He says, that where he says, it seems, it doesn't explain exactly what it means, but it seems like that by Shachar, when it's Diha, it's only a Shaila of a Derabban of Gzeres Chachamim. So therefore he says the same thing applies to Adem also. If it's an Adem which is so far-fetched from the original one, then it is also not Bechlal in the gather of a Deiraise. It's for sure only a Geder Darabana that there were geyser that it should be tummy. So now we ask the question. Okay, so this is a great explanation up until now that there's a deiraisa, the betzim itself a deiraisa, but only if you have an extreme example of light wine then it's so far removed, then it's not a deraisa, then it's for sure the Rabbanon. He asks a question, a big question. The mashmos of the Gemara is, when it says diha from each one of them. It doesn't say, if you follow this logic, that it's listed by order of dark to light, then what does the Gemara have to say? If it's lighter than either of these, it's tamei. It's tired. Each one's lighter than the next one. I should have said, if it's lighter than the last one, it's tired. So he says, no, he says, based on the Rambam, he says you could say that not only is it a darker color, it's also a different way that the shinui b'neim be'echus u'mahusa admumis. There's also a change in the way the color is. It's not only that one is brighter than the other one. It's not the only different characteristic between them. There's also a different, it's not only a different shade, it's also the depth or the quality of the color is also different. And that's why those are listed, the diha from each and every one of them. Yeah, so that's he explains that it seems to make it clear that when it's a tzedek, it's not so clear that it's to say that all of them are derabbanan, all of them are deraisa. Seems to be that Tzemach Tzedek looks at it that if it's a clear red, it's if it's from the reds which are closer diha min ha'adam, it's a suffix deraisa, which means that any kind of mare where you see some redness, you're entering into a shaila of a suffix deraisa. If it's a color which is so far removed from the red, then it's only a isur, then it's only the mitzad gzeira. What example do you have of such a color? You could probably say mashal pink. If it's a pink color, some pinks are clearly diluted blood, and some pinks are bichlal not. But the pink would be in that thing. Some pinks you might be able to say that they become a derabbanan, or maybe they're bichlal mutter if they're a color which is clearly not anything to do with red. But a light red, very, very light, that it's hard to see if it's red in it, might be only a shaila of a derabbanan, not a shaila of a deraisa. That is what's mashma from Kuf Chav Dalet. Let's go back to the Shulchan Aruch. Ve'ein, next few words. Ve'ein tahir ela mare lavan. First one that is tahir, mare lavan, white. What does white mean? The Alter Rebbe right away tells you, brings in the Beis Yosef, afilo ein lavan legamre, doesn't have to be completely white, but it's like a white clothing which had on it, dust fell on it, and it darkened a little bit its whiteness, is still tahir. Why? Because this kind of blackness does not come from mare admum, it's from red. That you could say that it's adem hu shalaka. It's a kind of blackness that comes from dust. And that kind of blackness that comes from dust is not in the category of the dam shalaka, of the red which turned into black, but rather dirt. And that's still in the category of lavan, that is tahir. In simple English, this is gray. A gray mare is in the category of a lavan. Now obviously, when you look at gray, the very dark gray is essentially black. But we're not talking about a very, very dark gray, we're talking about lighter gray. Gray that is a result of dust which fell on the clothing.
Why is gray not black?
Because it's a different color. It says it's something which is not ein shachruris kazeh bomin mare admum sheboy. It's not. We're not talking about a dark gray. We're talking about a very light gray. A very light gray. A light gray that looks like dust fell on clothing. That's not. That's a kasher amara. You can't say that it's diluted black. Diluted black is a problem. Now you have a Tzemach Tzedek in Kuf Chafei, Siman Kuf Chafei. It's the next one. Now, by the way, the Darkei Tshuva was machmer on gray, and the people which in today's poskim, when they discuss like how do you match the Darkei Tshuva with the Beis Yosef that Alter Rebbe brings, it's they say that, like I just told you, there's a difference between a dark gray that you could say that it came as a result of a black, and therefore diyah min shachar, and therefore It's a shaila that is damu shalaka, or it started as white and became gray. Question is, what's the starting point? If it started as black and became gray, it's a problem. If it started as white and became gray, it's not a problem. That's how you look at how do you exactly draw the line? With enough shimush, you'll figure it out. Siman Kuf Chafei in the Tzemach Tzedek. The Tzemach Tzedek starts. The question is not. The question is about as a minig that women do not go to. There was a Bach brings a certain minig that women would not wash that part of the body during the time between Hefsek Tare and Tefillah. And they want to know if there's any basis for this minig.
7 days?
Yeah. Tzemach Tzedek starts by discussing the whole idea of black. Yeah, and this is relevant for black and for white. This siman is relevant. He says as follows: what's black? The Gemara says that black is dam shenekar and became black shenekar. What does nekar mean? When is this category of nekar? Obviously, does it mean nekar min amokar? That's the moment it's separated from the veins in the mokar, that's when it became black? Did it become black in the Bais HaChitzain? Did it become black before it got to the Bais HaChitzain? Maybe it became black inside the mokar. Where is it? Where exactly did this become black? Soon you're going to see the nafkamina why, but where exactly does it become black? So he explains, first of all, the mashmos of the Gemara is, the simple mashmos of the Gemara seems like it's nekar from the mokar, and it became black in the Bais HaChitzin, and therefore it becomes tamei. Why? Because it was nekar from the mokar as blood, it came into the Bais HaChitzin as blood, and there it became black, and therefore she's asur, because it entered the Bais HaChitzin as blood. So there was zoiv dam bivsara, and that's it became black. And if it would have become black before, turned black already in the makir, be'etzem would have been a manitar, because black is not blood. The only thing is, because it came as blood, then it became. So it says, the Tzedek says, if so, how can you define, why does the shachir in the Gemara become a tumah for sure tamei? It's hard to say it's for sure tamei. Because you have no way of knowing if it nishchar in the Bais HaChitzin or in the makir, so you have a suffix. Maybe it became black before it left the makir. It entered the Bais HaChitzin as black. You have no idea. Ultimately, it's a suffix. If the whole yesod of black is because it was for sure blood and it became black, it shouldn't be considered a vadai tamei. It should be a suffix. Tamei misafik. Not that the Gemara points out as for sure one of the 5. So he explains that be'etzem what you look at it is, we know that akira is considered chilas hanacha. When it comes to someone shooting an arrow, from the first moment he shoots the arrow, it already counts as the end of what's going to happen at the end. Akira is haschalas hanacha. So even though could be that at the moment when the dam was nekar, she was not tamei, ultimately this akira, this leaving, because this is going to turn black, is called aschalta de tumah. It's the beginning of tumah. There's other aschaltas which are also tumah, but that's not what we're talking about now. And therefore, since it was black, since it was red at the time that it left the body, b'shas akirosoi, it was red. Even though it could be that it became black during the time of travel and before it hit the Bais HaChitzin, and therefore technically she should not become tamei. The fact is she's still tamei because when it started, that was the beginning of it that started as red. The akira tzerich hanacha is the beginning of the hanacha.
How do you know it started black?
Didn't start black, it started red. We know it started red. Blood doesn't come out of the veins black. Unless certain medical situations, someone's blood comes out black, a big problem, yeah?
Why can't you say the same svara when we're learning about the Shuchat as dark?
Yeah.
You say that because it's in derech ha'be'isha to see like that, why can't you use the svara to say that in the beginning, like when the dam left the makar before getting to the shviferes, it's the akira, which is already the seif hanacha. Meaning, why can't you be machshav the actual akira and the riyas dam coming out from the rechem?
Because it didn't go in the natural way.
That's the hanacha, but the akira was.
Yeah, but the akira has to end with the hanacha. Over here, the akira ends with hanacha the regular way. The only question is the color. The akira started as red.
Well, if the hanacha becomes not red, it could maybe be looked.
But it started as red, and even though when it came down, it turned into a color which technically could have been mutter, because it's. Yeah, and then he goes out. The Tzemach Tzedek goes through it at length. I'm not going to go through the explanation of Tzemach Tzedek now about this, whether you go basar akira or basar anacha. And he says that he discusses maybe a question, maybe taka, does it make a difference if maybe it became black as it entered the Bais HaChitzin, or maybe the way of the blood is that it becomes black as it's. Because this blood the way of blood is to turn black. This blood is to turn black, so therefore it has urchei. The urchei hu the derech ha'adim lahashchir, because the way of this red is to become black. So b'meila it never loses its status as red. It's one of the svaras that the Tzemach Tzedek brings. And the discussion of Sheferes is in Ois Gimel, but I'm not going into it specifically now. But if you want, you could look into it. The whole discussion why it is, and then he and then he says as follows. He says in Ois, I didn't want to go into the Sheferes because it's really relevant to Sif Gimel, which I was planning on talking about a different day, but it's here. You could look at it. Then he comes to the discussion about the Bach. The Bach brings in the name of, this is Ois Daled, the Bach brings in the name of Rabbi Yaakov Margolius that the woman, when she sees a something which is a white, thick, white and thick, smichas av loven ve'av, 2-3 hours after washing her body, she's tummy. Bach says, why? Derech hadam lislabim b'merchetz. If you wash blood long enough, it's going to become white. And we're told that it's dam nida, and she's tummy mesafik. The Taz right away says it makes absolutely no sense. The Gemara and Poskim, nobody mentions the concept that red turns into white. The Gemara discusses red turning into black, but not red turning into white. And if there's such a big thing, it's a much bigger chiddush that red turns into white than red turns into black. So therefore, to say it red turns into black, it's one color to another. To say red turns into white, it's such a big chiddush. The Gemara should have said the chiddush of red turning into black. Not a big chiddush. The Gemara should have said red turning into white. Much bigger. The Gemara doesn't mention it. So obviously the Taz Bechal doesn't hold of such a Taz says therefore that's no, it's clear that this whole love one doesn't make any sense. Yeah, and the Tzemach Tzedek points it out that it seems like the Taz disagrees with the whole notion of the Bach. It's not possible for blood to become white. But then Tzemach Tzedek says, Lo Yitzur, that blood could become white. Still in all, doesn't make sense. It should become Tamei. Why? Because it's clear that it became white before it left the body. Why? It left 2-3 hours after the bath. Blood, when it leaves, it goes right out. It goes very fast. It doesn't stay for 2-3 hours. So if you say that it lost its color 2-3 hours ago, obviously it lost its color in the body, not in the. So it's not shaykh that it's nislaben after it left. If it's nislaben after it's left, it would have been a shayla, like the black, the red and black is a shayla. When did it change? At what point in the stage did it change? So therefore, since it's clear there's no way that this could have changed into white at the time of travel, it's clear that she is tired. And only by black we say that she's tummy. And really, he says, even if you want to say it also in black, if it would turn into black before it left the body, we explained before that there is a svara that even then she should become asur, because she become tamei, because derech hadam to turn black. and therefore, in such a scenario, she should still remain tamei. So he says, by black is different, because black, it does become black by itself. But the white become white, even according to the Bach, that brings the name of Marim Margolius, he says, only through a bath. Not by itself. So therefore, unless it's not nishtana achar shenekra, she's for sure toir. By black, you could say derech adam to turn black, and therefore, even if it's nishtana before, we don't care what point it was nishtana. Even if it comes out of the body as black, it's still considered blood. Another point he points out is the shit of Marim Margolius is because it's samuch ve'av. It's smichas av. It's a thick thing. And there you have a shaila, maybe you could be chayshish to dam. Why? Because the dam is also samich ve'av. Blood also has a certain thickness to it. It's not a clear liquid. So when you see something which is white, smichus, lavan, ve'av, it has a metzias to it, then you're chayshish. Maybe, it did become, used to be red at some point. But that's the only thing the Bach is talking about. But if it's a plain, and then that's when the Marim Margolius is chayshish to it. But if it's mashke, lavan, v'tzalul, if it's completely clear, even according to Marim Margolius, there would be no chashash that it comes from blood. Because it's not of, and not so. It's not heavy like blood. It's not heavy like blood. And he says because that's the svara. That if it's totally clear, we say it's for sure not like blood. And only when it's thick, we have a chashash. Maybe it's like blood because it has the same nature as the blood. So therefore, bichlal we don't have to be chayshish in any white. Maybe it became white afterwards. Why? Because if it's blood that brightened up and became white, it should have had some tinge of redness to it. And when you see white that has zero tinge of redness, it's clear that it's not blood. But seems like if there would be some tinge of redness to it, it's for sure aser. Yeah, that's why if you look at whites, sometimes you see a very, very light diluted tinge of red to it. So you can't say, oh, it's white, it's not a problem. The fact is it has a tinge of red, it is completely aser. Huh? The what?
The very, very, very light red, the France wine red.
No, that's not a red. He says if you're going to go through a very light, a color, it's still aser, just not midiraisa. It's derabanan. We're not discussing the Deraisa Derabanan. The Asr is Tomei. We're not saying Deraisa. Kuf Chavdal was just trying to figure out a discussion. Where do we draw the line between Deraisa and Derabanan? It's all still Asr Derabanan. Still Tomei. Still can't say it's Mutter. And therefore, Tzemach Tzedek says, because this is such a far-fetched idea that blood could turn into white through washing yourself, therefore you b'chlal have to be machmir, like the chumrah of the Bach. V'adarabah, if you do want to believe the Bach, that's there. The Adarabah Tzemach Tzedek says it's good. She should go into the bath, should wash, and if the blood turns white, it's even better. You can follow the shit of the Bach, because since it's going to come out as white, she's not going to become tamei. So you're helping Taras B'nai Yisrael. So if you want to follow like the Bach, for sure you shouldn't follow his chumrah, because then you're helping Taras B'nai Yisrael. And otherwise, since it doesn't make sense, you shouldn't follow his chumrah anyways. That is regarding white. Back to the Shulchan Aruch. V'chein mare yorik. Also, mare yorik. Yorik usually refers, and today it means green, but it would be referring to is really on the yellowish spectrum. Even if it looks like beeswax or like gold, that's the yorik they're referring to. Yorik means on the yellow white. Or green like leaves, that's for sure not a problem. Blue is also in that same category. Even if it has the consistency of blood and it's thick, it's still not a problem. Any of these colors is fine. The Alter Rebbe explains to you what is this oy hazov. Yeah, it says if it's hayorik kemar shavo yazov, it's what's azov. He says even he brings this is all from the. He says oy esrig, the color of esrig, yellow like esrig, oy chalman beitza, or the yellow of an egg. And all of them yesh ben netilat mumis. All these yellows have a certain netiya to red. Because these are not real yellows. These are more what we would be in the orange color group. Yellow-orange, not straight up yellow. Straight up yellow doesn't have any tinge of red to it. But yellow mixed with red becomes orange. So he says a yolk of an egg is a yolk of an egg, or a esrig, or gold, or beeswax. They're all these yellow oranges which seem to have some redness to it. And still no, these are all fine. The Shulchan Aruch is telling you that those are fine. And for sure, green, which is like karsi, which is like a leek, I think, that grows, that's for sure doesn't have any netiya to admumis. That's kosher. Now the Alter Rebbe brings a Bach. The Bach says that this is only talking about when it started as this color and it ended as this color. That means started when it was namada. You looked at it now, it's green. It dried up, remained green. You looked at it, dark yellow-orange, started as yellow-orange, ended as yellow-orange. What happens if after it dried up, it changed this color and at the edges it showed some kind of red? It becomes tamei. Why? Because he says that the Bach still continues the shitta. When it left the body, it changed color. And then when it dried up, it went back a little bit to its original color, which is inside of it. There is a little bit of red inside of it, and it went back to this original color. And therefore, he says, the Bach says, when you get a mare, which is wet, you should wait until it dries. That's what the Bach says. The Taz and the Shach both disagree on this nekuda of the Bach, and they say no, you don't have to wait. We're not going to say that we have to wait to see if something bad will go. We're not making to be machzik something bad. You don't have to wait. Taz and Shach, you don't have to wait. Rather, you could look at it right away. But the Taz and Shach don't discuss what happens if you did look at it later and it does have the redness to it. That's discussed in Tzemach Tzedek. Then comes the Chacham Tzvi, which is the other extreme of the Shitta, that says that that as long as when it came out of the body, it was a kosher color, we don't care what happens afterwards. Even if Chazar Liyas Adem or Shachor, even if it goes and becomes completely red or black, after it's dry, she's still tired. Why? The only time we say that a color was blood and it turned into another color is only when Loven is only by Shachor, by black, which we say it's red, which turned into it. But if it's white, or it's green, or it's yellow, we don't say that there was blood that changed its color and came back and then went back to it. You have a question, but we see that it changed. Yesterday it was yellow, today it's red. What happened in between? He says, no. It's the air outside, the beged, these things cause a change in it. And the Shvus Yaakov disagrees on the Chacham Tzvi and Paschal like a Taz Nashach. What exactly that means? You see, the Taz Nashach say that the way Shvus Yaakov understands the Taz Nashach is, if when you see it, it's dry and it's red, it's a problem. But you don't have to wait until it's dry. So there are three extremes. The Bach, you have to wait till it's dry in case it's going to change. Chacham Tzvi, even if it changes after it dries, it's not a problem. And the Taz Nashach, you look at it right now, and what you see is what it is. On this you have a Tzemach Tzedek Kuf Chavav, Kuf Chav Zayin. Kuf Chav Zayin is really short. Essentially, Kuf Chavav and Kuf Chav Zayin is one tshuva. You would have to put Kuf Chav Zayin really should be the Ois Hey of Kuf Chav Vav, and the Kitzur of Kuf Chav Vav the last ois of the kitzur of Kuf Chavav is supposed to be split into two to cover it. Kuf Chav Zayin really belongs as part of Kuf Chavav. It's direct hamshach to it. And you see, because the kitzur on the end of Kuf Chavav also is mesakim what's in Kuf Chav Zayin. The maskana is in Kuf Chav Zayin, but the kitzur is in the end of kitzur of Kuf Chavav tells you already the maskana is going to be in Kuf Chav Zayin. So it's really one tshuva. So what is he? He first, the Tzemach Tzedek in Kuf Chavav brings the Bach, which the Alter Rebbe mentioned to us, brings the Chacham Tzvi that argues on the Bach. And first the Tzemach Tzedek goes into the explanation why the Chacham Tzvi's Svara makes sense. First the Kolel that Tzemach Tzedek wants to bring is why the Chacham Tzvi's Svara makes sense. And that starts in, that's Ois Aleph of this tshuva of Kuf Chavav. First of all, we're not choishish to nevias, to things, prophecy and nevias. You see something that it was red, and it became white, or it became green. The Chachamim, if they would have said that, they would have believed it, they would have written it by Yorick also. They didn't write it, just like they didn't write by Lavan, like it's in the previous tshuva. By Yorick they didn't write it. They only wrote it by black. It's the first thing. Next thing, Kol HaTumas Kishas Metzios, and the Gemara says every tumah is the way is based on the time when we find it. And especially in our scenario, when there is no chazakah that it ever was red. In the Kol HaTumas Kishas Metzios, and even when there was a chazakah, let's forget. Over here, there is no chazakah that this green or this yellow used to be blood, and it changed. And this mare is becheskas yorik meikori kishas metziasi. The same place, same way that it was a yorik when it was found, it retains that chazaka even if it changes the color. It changed. So the Chacham Tzvi makes sense. The air, the clothing, whatever it is. Now the Taz and the Shach that they disagree on the Chacham Tzvi is partially. Yeah, but they said you don't have to wait. But what's their svara? They don't go to the chazakah, and at the same time they don't go to the svara of changing. They go on a simple svara. What you see right now is what it is. But if you're going to look at it when it's dry, it's mashma from the shach and the taz, that should become tummy. And why should it become tummy? And this would be whether it's white or it's green or it's yellow, any color that.
Why is it color if you find it dry?
No, if you find it white or green, it remains at that one. Even if it dries afterwards and it changes color, it remains as the original color it was when it came out of the body.
And that's because
we're not choishish from the vias and tumas kishas metzioson, and therefore since b'shas metzioson when it came out, it was green. It remains green. Now you see it red, it's not red, it's green.
But if you first find it dry when it is red, that's it.
Not according to Chacham Tzvi. If it's completely dry, which is red, no problem, no. No, it's still going to be aser.
Right.
Yeah, because you have no way of knowing that it used to be green. According to the Taz and Shach, you see it, what say it's kosher, probably throw it out, don't look at it anymore. Yeah? You see it's kosher, throw it out. If you're going to wait and it's going to dry, you see it red, it's a problem now. According to Chacham Tzvi, if you kept it and it dried, you don't change the psak. According to Taz and the Shach, what you see right now is when you see it, is when it's going to be a problem. And it seems, based on the Taz and the Shach and the Bach, that their svaris applies whether it's white or it's yellow. The same svara that applies in white applies also in yellow. That when you see it, if it changes later to a red, it's a problem. The Bach it seems like the Bach is machmer in both of them. And Tzemach Tzedek says, this makes absolutely no sense. The only way you could make sense is if you follow the shitta of the Kreisi and Pleisi. That's towards the end of Ois Beis and Tzemach Tzedek. Shitta of the Kreisi and Pleisi says that the logic, he says that the Taz and the Shach have a svara that really the red was hiding inside the white. It was all mixed. Now you see, when you saw the matter was wet, the red wasn't visible. And after it dried up, the color split, and it became essentially this svara is what we saw in Kuf Tzadik, that you have a mare that the red got pushed to the edges. Yeah. So over here he says that didn't get pushed to the edges and had to wait till it separated naturally. Naturally, the blood was hiding inside the white, and with time it separated, but there was blood there. And that's why later, when it dried, you see the red on the edges. You see the red that is pushed out. Because what the Bach is talking about, it doesn't mean that the whole Mara changed colors. According to Chacham Tzvi, you see that you see a green in the middle. And even if you're going to wait after, you're going to see red pushing to the side, it's not a problem. According to the Bach, we say that the red was there. Now, according to the Bach, we're always chayshish to it. But what's the svara of it? The svara of the Bach is because it was really red, it changed on the way out and it changed back. Taz and Shach don't look at it like that. Taz and Shach say that we look at it as the way we see it right now. So if the way we look at it, we see it right now, what's the svara why it's aser? So Tzemach Tzedek says, the crazy place he has a svara that is because it changes, because it was hiding inside and it separated out of it. That's the only reason it would make sense. Yeah, that will be according to the Taz of the Shach, that even if it was not, so now, if it was not red when it came out of the body, we don't know, but later when we look at it, we see that it became red, then it would be then it would have that problem, because we will go after the end of it. We go after what we see it right now towards the end. The Lashon of Tzemach Tzedek, it's as if the red was inside, the koyach of the red was inside this yellow from the beginning. And therefore, seemingly, whether it's yellow or it's white or it's green, the same sort would apply, that if later you see it inside, the koyach ha'odim is hiding inside and they push to the sides afterwards. Even when it came out, she would be tummy. But that doesn't fit according to the Bach, because the Bach svara has nothing to do with a hiding koyach of red that's hiding inside the white or inside the yellow or inside the green. That's not the Bach. The Bach svara is that this was red would change colors. Not that it was a white, came out white, it never was red, but it has red hidden inside, which with time comes out of hiding. According to the Bach, if it would be something, if it came out kashanekar, it was white, and it had red hiding inside of it, according to the Bach, it would be mutter. The only reason, according to the Bach, it's also is because he says it was red when it was nekar and it changed colors as it came out. But if it was white and it has red hidden, it wouldn't be a problem according to the Bach. So therefore, according to the Bach, this svara doesn't make sense. The svara the Kolel places. So the svara the Kolel only fits according to the Taz, which they look at the time it is. According to the Bach, you have to say that the only reason is because he holds that colors do change in their travel, and blood could change to any color. Could change to green, could change to white, could change to yellow, could change to black. The Gemara says, but he says all of them could change to. Now the Gemara Maseches Nideh says, this is also all in the Tzemach Tzedek, that if you have a mara which when it was wet, it was tamei, and then it dried, it looks tahir, she remains tamei. And according to Svare, which is a fakert also, if when it's wet it was tahir, and when it dried it became tamei, we should follow basar meikara, like we said previously, that you have to follow akira. Akira is the aschal to the tumah, or over here it should be fakert, aschal to the tahara. You start it started as tahir, it should remain as tahir. Just like when you started as tamei, it should remain as tamei. When you started as tahir, it should also remain as tahir. And that is what the Chavas Das actually brings as a svara for the Chacham Tzvi. Why he's masking with the Chacham Tzvi, because he goes on that logic. Because when something is tamei when it's wet, and then it dries up and became tar, it's the same thing also for kert, it becomes tar, she remains tamei, same thing, something which has started off as tar and ended up in the color which looks tamei, she remains in her original chazakah. But that only works according to Chacham Tzvi, and maybe according to Shach and Das, doesn't work according to the Bach, because ultimately according to the Bach, his svara remains the same. It was red when it left, changed colors when it traveled. And additionally, according to the Bach, he holds that you can't learn the chumrah from a kula. B'chlal, the svara, could you learn the kula from a chumrah? The fact that the Gemara says that when it started off as tamei and dried up and looks tar, she remains tamei, does that mean that you could take the chumrah, flip it around and say, oh, started as tar, and now it looks tamei, she's still tar? You can't say like that. So then he moves into another way. Okay, so let's see how we're going to be able to deal with if you have such a scenario. This was a practical question of a woman which had such a scenario of this color. So in Eis Daled he goes into different mahalach. Let's look at a different mahalach. He says the Alter Rebbe in Simuk of Tzaddik brings the concept of cheskas tahara of a woman, isha b'cheskas tahara imedes, as a tziruf. Certain places we mitzaref it to something else. So over here, Tzemach Tzedek says maybe when let's be mitzaref. When the mare came out, it was a color which is not a problem. You're mitzaref to the cheskas tahara. So then the fact that it changed afterwards, it's a suffix. It's a suffix. Maybe the air changed it, or maybe b'chlal it's a suffix together with the cheskas tahara. So we're going to look at it not as a shaila suffix if the kesem is good or not. If the mat is good, I'm going to look at it as like a kesem. By a kesem we have a suffix shema me'al ma'asi, and by a kesem you have a suffix shema me'al ma'asi, and together with the cheskas tahara we're matir, and we say she's tired. So over here also we'll say that this is a suffix. Suffix maybe it became red because of the change, like the Chacham Tzvi says, together with the cheskas tahara, and therefore we're going to move it into the category of ksamim. Once we move into the category of ksamim, then it becomes a total derabanan. Ksamim are only geyser, Chacham are only geyser on full red. And another suffix we have, Tzemach Tzedek says, maybe bichlal it's not one of the reds that are Asr Medina. Together with the suffix, maybe it changed because of the air. And we have a suffix that maybe it's bichlal not one of the reds that is Asr Medina. And she has a cheskas tahara. All that together, we say that this color is no longer a problem when it's this white that dried up and has white that had dried up and became on the edges red. And that's what Simuk Kuf Chav Zayin comes in. That's the hemshech of it. Simuk Kuf Chav Zayin, he brings the shitta of the Chacham Tzvi, which is Chelek and the Bach. He brings all the people that are maskim to the Chacham Tzvi. The Maim Rabbim brings 4 poiskim which are maskim like the Chacham Tzvi. The Korei Dinim also brings it. The Chavas Das also seems, all of them seem to say like the Chacham Tzvi, that it's totally depends on how it looked when it came out. So Tzemach Tzedek now, the Maise, what does Tzemach Tzedek write? This is the end of Kuf Chav Zayin, the bottom half. Him came belovon. Lo shayach loymar kein lidan al kolponim. By the he says from the Bach, what the Bach says about Lavan doesn't make sense to follow him b'chlal. Gam beyorik also in the green or the yellows also we have to say it makes sense to the Chacham Tzvi. Why? Because kol atumas kishas metziyoson. We follow the time when they were found, when they came, and when do we say mitziyasan? What's the mitziyasan? When do we find them? Kishas mitziyasan maguf, at the moment that it came out of the body. Therefore, we look at it at that point. Umikol malkim, a few lines. Umikol malkim lemaise ein lahakol neged mashmos ataz v'shach, and the other ones also. But still in all, he says the poil you don't by this yellow or green that after it dried, it expanded, can't be makel against the shach and tas completely. That even if you're going to see it later after it dried, you're going to see originally it was yellow. That's too far. If when you see it, it's yellow like a tas and shach, good. But if you waited till it dried, and now you see that it has red around it, it's a problem. You can no longer be materet. That's how he says. So he's even though Chacham Tzvi is more mekel, Tzemach Tzedek seems to take that approach. The Alter Rebbe didn't bring, and then the Alter Rebbe just concludes the Minchas Yaakov that he passed like a shach and a tas. It seems like the Alter Rebbe also held like a Shvus Yaakov, that goes like a shach and a tas. And Tzemach Tzedek also pretty clearly tells you that you can't go against the shach and a tas, but only when it comes to yellow, greens, not to go to the extreme of white, that they say also by white, afterwards it's a problem. Now, Bechlal, when it comes to this color of yellow, just important to point out, that Shalom HaKadosh writes that green or yellow, he leaves a tzarech iyun. Why? Because the Maram Mintz was Machmer. Maram Mintz was Machmer in Yorok, whatever Yorok is. Therefore, the Shalosh says that when it comes to yellow, like the yellow orangey, like wax, you can only be matir if you have another tzad together with it. And if she has argosha and then she finds this color which is yellow, the Shalosh has to be machmer. The only time it could be mekel is by a kesem, according to the Shalosh in yellow. And by kinuach, he says lakano lakano kol fidei seinei amayra. Siddur tahara also brings Bal Nefesh Yachmir La'atzmai in this color of Shava. However, most of the poskim are mekel. It's clear, very clear from the Alter Rebbe that he does not hold that, because Alter Rebbe clearly writes, Oy hazov, oy eser gechelim beitza sheyesh bohem natir la'admumis, and therefore it's mutter, the way he explains it. Alter Rebbe tells you, brings you the examples of these yellows that are noitel admumis, and he still says they're fine. So it's clear from Alter Rebbe that yellows and oranges, these oranges like shaiva and are fine. It's not at all a color of a problem. Yeah, and that's so the ma'aseh that when it comes to those colors, we don't have to be machmer like the shla, even though usually we do try to be machmer. Like the Kabbalah over here is b'chal not a shayla to be machmer, because Alter Rebbe clearly points out to you these colors are fine. The only time you could be machmer is when the yellow turns later into red. The Tzemach Tzedek says the chatchila you should be machmer. These are all the colors that are mentioned in Shulchan Aruch. There's one color which is not. And that's the color you'll most often see in Maris. Surprisingly, it's nowhere to be found. That's the color brown. It's nowhere in Shulchan Aruch. The Siddur Tahara brings an Ois Aleph of our Siman, also in Siman Kuf Tzadik. The Lashon that he writes is Dam hanoite letzeva broin beloshin aim. Yeah. The dam that beloshin Ashkenaz, whichever one you want to. Yeah, there's blood which is noite, the color mare which is noite to the color of brown. And what's brown? He says it's like the peels of like the shells of chestnuts, or mashke hakave or coffee. It's tahir. For sure in the kesem. Why? Lefi she'ein noite ladmumis. Because it has no noite, it's not noite at all to admumis, to red. Ki'im l'shachar, it's noite to black. Shoninu diha mikan tahir. We learned in the Gemara that diha mikan, if it's less than those, it's tahir. That's what the Siddur Tahara says. That's the makar of he is the Matzasi Kosev. It's from the Shilas Yavitz. A big question. Diha is asur, not mutter. He says it's mutter. When you look in the Shilas Yavitz, there's the makar of the Siddur Tahara. He also says that it's because the brown color has natia doesn't have natia to red, only has natia to black. Right? But if it will be, it's mashma from the Yavitz, if it will be a dark brown, which is mamash noita to black, not dihol, not very further away from it, we would be metame. But this brown that the Shilas Yavitz is talking about, it's not really noita to any of these colors. It's noita, but it's noita a little bit to black. But that's not enough to make it that it's a diha of black, that it's a descendant of black, and therefore it's not a problem according in this one. And therefore, the lashon of the Shilas Yavitz is noite lebroin and lahachar. When it's noite to a brown, you don't have to be machmer. It doesn't say that the complete brown is you could be mekel. The Aruch HaShulchan also uses the same lashon, noite lebroin. Now, Siddur Tahara uses the example of coffee. Coffee depends how you make it. It could be very dark coffee. It could be coffee with milk, white coffee. So the Levushi Mordechai, he points out that the coffee that it's talking about, that the Siddur Tahara is talking about, is coffee mixed with milk. Coffee mixed with milk, that's fine. That's the tahir. That you can be metahir. That's a brown that has no semblance to red whatsoever. Shari Toyer has a similar approach. He says that the coffee, he's talking about coffee that's spilled on a white shirt. That's also not a dark brown. Rather, it's a lighter brown. Brown mixes white. That's also fine. A poil, there's a big machlokes which way to do it. There's people who are completely machmer on browns. There's people who are completely makel on browns. There's people who are machmer on browns which are light, which are dark, and browns which are light. I'm soon going to see Lamaisa what is done. Look at the Be'er Moshe, the Berziner, they make a book that collected all the Piskei Dinim. It's called Piskei Be'er Moshe. I think we have it downstairs. He has an approach as follows. He says, if it's brown, like a coffee with milk, then it's mutter freikessen for sure, and by any bdika other than hefsek tahara. Hefsek tahara or machmer. If it's brown like coffee without milk, or the chestnuts that the Siddur Tahara says it's fine, he says it's only mutter in the kesem. But definitely not in hefsek tahara, and even in the bdika, only b'shat tzchak v'tzorech gadol, when there's no other way around it. Behefsek tahara, neither of them. Only if it's mamish, neither of them. Moichdachuk, if it's a very light brown, you could be make of the hefsek tahara was clean. Then the moichdachuk comes out a light brown, it's fine. But a dark brown, not.
Was that last one about the light brown, dark brown?
If it's a light, very light brown on the moich, then you have and the hefsek tahara was totally clean, then you could rely on it. That's a bein Moshe. The minig of the Lubavitch Rabbanim, the old Lubavitch Rabbanim, was that in the first hefsek tahara they're not makel at all in browns, and the first 3 days, any browns that are light browns up until like coffee with milk, that would be matir, but any dark browns not, and from the third day and on, even dark browns are mutter. But dark browns in the first 3 days, and for sure in the hefsek tahara, they would not be matir. That's what the Masoiris of the Lubavitch Rabbanim are. That you not make Kesem tamid mutar, yeah.
The first 3 days, is it the first 3 days of Shiur, or is it the last 3 days of the 7? Like combined with
The first 3 days of Shiva Nakim. After she stops the blood. After
she does it late.
no, it's the first 3 days from when the blood stopped.
Okay,
So-
so it is the first.
First 3 days from when the blood stopped. That's what we machmer. And the hefsek tahara. Now, when you look at brown, just a simple practical discussion. Brown could be similar to black. If it's a dark brown, it could be similar to red. Or similar to yellow. There is no one brown that you're going to say that it's... So, any shitta you take, ultimately you have to just think, what brown is he talking about? Some people are makel and brown because they're talking about coffee with milk. That's a brown which looks like a yellow. Somebody's completely oyster and brown because he looked at a brown. It looks like a red, close to a red. Somebody that was a little bit less, not so machmer and browns, but not so makel, because the brown by him looked like black, close, like a descendant of black. Now but for the Siddur Tahara it seems like it's not so. Siddur Tahara tells you brown, even like chestnuts and coffee is fine. The shells of chestnuts are very dark brown. Still he says it's fine. There is an interesting Tzemach Tzedek which is in your book. It's not in Hilchos Nida. It's in Eira Chaim. In your book, page 318. It's Eira Chaim Siman Tezvav. And it seems like he understands the Siddur Tahara farkenet from the whole world. So you're going to see why. If you go through, this is a discussion about what color ink for writing Diyoi L'Chatchila should be. And if you wrote with letters that are not exactly black, what the din is. So if you go about 6 lines down, Mashenkin בנידו אין זה, זאת אומרת, התפילין, שמריס אלו שבו באשר אינן שוחר כלל. שהרי אפילו גבי דם נידה, שעכשיו אין בקין במרוס, today we're not bucking matters, ומתאמין עבדי הוד השוחר, ומתאמין even a faded black, עם כל זה מתארים green ובלוי, ומתאר the yellow, orange and blue, I'm בירדי סימן קופ"ח, ובסידי טהרה שם ספקותן א', כמרי ברוין חולו. And in siדי טהרה, even מרי ברוין. Alma, דאין שייכי אפילו לדיהו דשוחר. Why is that? Because these three, and he puts the brown of the Siddur Tahara as one of the three colors that he mentioned, with green, with Yorick and with Bloy. And he puts them all, these have absolutely no shaykhs to Dio de Shachar. These colors have no relationship to Shachar. Definitely have no relationship to Adam, but definitely have no relationship to Shachar. That's why they're completely mutter. Because if you look at this, I don't know if you could pass on Tzemach Tzedek and Erechaim, but the Tzemach Tzedek, the way he puts it out over here is, the color brown has absolutely no shaykhs to black. That's why it's mutter. He doesn't differentiate between anything. So if he puts this in the same category as yellow and green and orange, and not in the same category as diha of shachar, like the Tahara tried to say, so the way he understands it is Tafke does not have diha de shachar. It has nothing. It's brown is completely fine. So that's why there are Rabbanim which will be matir any browns, even Rabbanim, based on this, even on the first 3 days of Hefek Tahara. After the first 3 days of Shiur Nikim. Do you want to do it like that? I think it's ultimately you have Maseres of Rabbanim, and they for sure also knew Tzemach Tzedek. So Lav Dafki you could go against the Tzemach Tzedek, or go against the Maseres, huh? אבל הוא אומר לך שאין בזה אפילו דיו דה שוחר.
איך שהוא הבין את זה טהרה.
כן, אז זאת אומרת שהוא הבין את הסידי טהרה שאין בזה דיו דה שוחר. לא כמו שסידי טהרה עצמו כותב, הוא מבין הסידי טהרה הפוך מהסידי טהרה. אין בזה דיו דה שוחר כלל, לכן זה מותר. מותר כמו הכחול והירוק, לא מביא שיטה הפוכה. That's my point. One thing, we have a few minutes left, is one little nikud I want to point out. It's not connected to this, to what we learned until now. It's connected to Maris. This is in Siman Kuf Beis in the Tzemach Tzedek. Don't be scared by the length of it, because I'm only reading the first few lines and then the beginning afterwards. Siman Kuf Beis. It's a shaila from Reb Hillel, I think Reb Hillel of Parich. It's on page 141 in this book. What's the question that he has? There's a Siddur Tahara in Siman Kuf Pei Gimel in the beginning that says that when you're talking about the Chumra, the Chmiru, Chumra Sarav Zera, of Tipas Dam Kechardol, that the Siddur Tahara says this only applies when you know for a fact that it came from the Makar. But if it's a suffix, if this Tipas Dam Kechardol came from the Makar or not, we're Mekel. We're toilet that it probably came in Atzdadim, this drop. She'ein derech dam poches mikegris ve'oid lovim ha'moker, because usually blood coming from the moker comes in a flow that's more than a gris, and only there's a chumre. You have the chumre Reb Zera lahachmir, but that's only when you know for sure it came from the moker. If you have a suffix, if it came from the moker or not, you don't have to be machmer. That's the tahara. That's also the bach. And the one that asked the question give a whole explanation why he bechaled it makes no sense what the Siddur Tahara says, and he concluded that there was one time that he was matir a dat which was less than the chardal together with another suffix, but ultimately he's not comfortable with the fact that he was matir it because the Alter Rebbe doesn't mention this kul of the Siddur Tahara in the Shulchan Aruch. So you turn the page and you have the tshuva, the Tzemach Tzedek, and all the questions. The Tzemach Tzedek, it's page 142, and he says, Mashin Iskasha, I'll see what the question he asks in Siddur Tahara, it's a good question, and then he says, the fact that Alter Rebbe does not bring the Siddur Tahara, l'chayra is not really a raya, because Alter Rebbe doesn't bring a Siddur Tahara at all anywhere. It doesn't mention Siddur Tahara in Shulchan Aruch. But the fact it's clear that Alter Rebbe did see the Siddur Tahara because the svaras of the Siddur Tahara appear in a few places in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. And he says, Zeichel Adavar nimtza shebekam mekom svaras of Siddur Tahara. This detail this svara, that if you have a suffix, if it comes from the makar, or it doesn't come from the makar, that he does not bring it all. So mashma, he does not hold of this svara. So lamaisi, you can't rely on the Siddur Tahara, he says. But he says, if you see that this little dot is in a place that is clear that it didn't go into the body of the woman. It was on the edge of the mare. And aglaim ledava, that didn't go into there. Or even if the woman has a suffix if that area went in or not. But the issue mesupekes, it says this towards when you look at the mare and you see that this dot or this tipa is not in the area which makes sense that it went, is it a glaim adova that didn't go into there, whether the woman clearly says, or the woman's mesupik, obviously if the woman says for sure it went in, then you have no question, but if the woman's mesupik, or she says that, then you could rely on the Siddur Tahara. Or, v'chein, in amare mesupekes, if you have a suffix on the mare, imugele odem, you're not sure if it's yellow or red, yesh lismech kanal betipa ktana moed, a very, very small dot, and you can't tell if it's red or it's yellow, you could rely on it. If you could tell that it's red, then if it's this is talking about obviously not that's in an area that for sure went into the body. If there you see that it has a dot, and the dot is a suffix, if it's yellow, to use a suffix, if it's yellow or red, and a very small dot, you could rely on the Siddur Tahara that you could say maybe came from the tzdadim. But if you could tell for sure that it's red, then you can't rely on it. With this we conclude for today.